Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for January 9th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stephen, do you have any announcements?
That's 10-year penalty for false start.
Yes. You're watching too much football.
I know Christmas tree pickup is still going on. I've seen a few around my neighborhood, so just make sure if you put one out, notify the DPW, the corner you left it, and they'll be coming around. That's just about it.
And the only announcement I wanted to make is that we had a very special event this week with the Veterans Circle on Wednesday. We have a resident, Steve Douglas, who was given the Purple Heart. He had received it back in Vietnam, and on Veterans Day, about 20 years ago, his house was robbed and they stole it. And the veterans agent worked and got him his Purple Heart replaced, and it was presented to him. And he was... served in Vietnam, had Defense Medal, Combat Infantry Badge, Vietnam Service Medal, and Campaign Medal, as well as the Purple Heart. And it was a good reminder to us in the town of how many people have sacrificed and what a true treasure our veterans are for the town. And that was our resident, Steve Douglas. There are probably other Purple Heart recipients out there that we don't even know about because we do not get lists. So if you do have a Purple Heart member of your family who is a resident or used to be a resident of Longmeadow, why don't you send an email or give a call to the Veterans Agent, because we are a Purple Heart community and we like to spend our time to set aside and respect and honor our Purple Heart recipients. Thank you. We'll go straight now into resident comments and then select board comments. Kim, do you want to?
Sure, thank you.
You say your name and address.
Sorry, Kim King, 15 Pinewood Drive. I'm here just in support on the 23rd of January, you have a vote or a conversation coming up about the SOI for the middle schools. And I just wanted to read a little something that I wrote in support of that. I'm here as a concerned taxpayer in our community. Last month, I did write you a letter asking you to support moving forward with the middle school SOI that will come before you for approval on January 23rd from the school committee. I am asking you to put politics aside and do the right thing for our community. Mr. Foster and Mr. Gold's reply and letter to the paper were concerning to me. By voting no and ignoring an ongoing problem in our town and could be forcing us to spend taxpayer dollars on costly repairs to buildings that are at the end of their life. In 2008 and 2015, both the buildings were deemed at the end of their life by JCJ. The needs of both middle schools exceed what can be addressed through custodial care, regular maintenance, and typical expenditure. They have original air handlers. The air quality and circulation for these schools and teachers at Williams particularly is less than ideal. They do not have proper life safety systems. That means no fire suppression, no generator, little emergency lighting, difficulty maintaining fire alarm systems. They are not ADA compliant. They have original electrical and original plumbing. Williams has mostly the original single-pane windows from 1959. The students and staff at Glenbrook cannot have air conditioning because the building's electrical does not support it. A vote to approve shows the people in this town that you understand that we need to do something with our middle schools, and they cannot stay as they are. It is not a want at this point. Just like the DPW and certain town infrastructure, something needs to be done now to the middle schools. Some have asked the question, what if our town gets chosen quickly from the Massachusetts School Building Authority for a rebuild or remodel, similar to the high school situation? If the state chooses our schools, then that should tell you that the condition they are in is currently unacceptable. If our town is chosen, that means we are among the worst 5 to 10% of schools in the state, and why wouldn't you feel the need to move forward with replacing? 2 years ago, I sat here as a school committee member asking for you to approve the SOI. You mentioned you were wanting to hear from the community. You turned it down because you didn't feel it had the support of the community. I believe at this point you do have the support. You've received letters of endorsement. There's a petition with over 230 signatures in support of moving forward with the SOI. There's a community Facebook page supporting the initiative. It's extremely difficult for parents to physically come to these meetings, so please take the petition and the letters that you were sent very seriously. The town has been talking about the middle school project for nearly a decade. I understand why the high school went first, but the middle schools cannot wait any longer. Please, when the school committee comes in front of you on January 23rd for your approval, vote yes to submit the SOI to the MSBA. Thank you.
We usually don't have back and forth. I did want to make a
Right.
comment, though, that the 23rd is the presentation. We
Okay.
really are not sure if we'll be voting on that day because we'll still have to deliberate.
I figured, and know just from past votes, you guys will have a presentation one day, and then you take some time, and maybe, I'm hoping, within the good two, whatever the legal good amount of time is, so that they can still have time to submit this SOI, you can find the time to vote.
Yes, they're going to give us the time schedule where we need to worry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And we have another select board comment. Mr. Russell?
Good evening. Jim Russell.
Visitor comments. And before you begin, I wanted to say that LCTV has given us listening devices. When Mr. Russell speaks, it's not amplified, and often people within the room have difficulty hearing. If you want to, we have listening devices, and I know that many of the residents have complained about not being able to hear. So they are up here. If you want one, just raise your hand. I'll make sure you get one. All right, go ahead. Thank you.
Jim Russell, 108 Bel Air Drive, Long Meadow. I'm here tonight wearing several hats. The first hat as senior member of Parks and Recreation. I gave to the town manager a handout, which is self-explanatory, but I would like to read into the minutes the information forthwith. There have been concerns over the last few years as to the direction and also income that the daycare over at the senior center was performing. Greenwood Center is a single-level former elementary school located at 231 Maple Road, abutting the Connecticut state line, and built in 1965. The building has 20,500 square feet, with approximately 8,500 of that space occupied by the Council on Aging. I'm going to skip the rest of the information. Programs offered through the Parks and Rec Department at Greenwood Center include daycare extended day, day camps, soccer clinics, gymnastics, Zumba, dance, adult group fitness, musical notes, new parents support group, jumping clay, kids yoga, digital photography, babysitter training, co-ed volleyball, 40 years plus, and youth basketball. Daycare is a year-round program which had over 50 children enrolled in fiscal year 16 and accounted for $457,714 in revenue in fiscal 16. Extended day and day camps are seasonal programs and accounted for $386,668 of our fiscal year 16 revenue. Both of these programs accommodated 100 children each day. Daycare, extended day, and day camps accounted for 2/3 of our total department revenue in fiscal 2016. And that total was $844,382. Close to $1 million that was turned back into the general fund. The general recreation programs listed above operate in sessions and account for 173 participants each session, except youth basketball. The youth basketball program, LYBA, has over 800 participants, with approximately 1/3 using Greenwood Center. The above-mentioned programs are only at Greenwood and not on all the programs we offer. It is important to recognize that the daycare, daycare component of the program offered at Greenwood uses 3 classrooms and other programs use the rest of the building. An interesting part of the facts in here, approximately 2,000 square feet of this building is corridor. You first walk into the building, you have a corridor that's 150 feet long by 9 feet, which has no useful purpose except as a people mover. And then when you get down to the double doors, down towards where the daycare is, I dare say you probably have another maybe another 300 or 400 feet of corridor. So when you look at 8,000 square feet for the senior center, you're really down to about 6,000 square feet. I'm here tonight to pitch that in the process of looking at what we're going to do for the seniors in town, that we take into consideration what Parks and Rec has done, acknowledge that we had problems 2 years ago. The director and staff pulled things together, and it's a rosy picture. But we serve hundreds of children. The team does a phenomenal job. They are dedicated, they work hard, they take pride in what they are doing. I had the opportunity with the chair of the park board and our wives to attend a appreciation dinner for all the employees of the park department. And it was very well attended. We had a great time. They appreciated the comments that I made on behalf of the park board, and they're proud of what they do. We are fortunate. We have one of the greatest Parks and Rec employees group in the Commonwealth right here. So as you select board folks start your thinking about how we're going to continue to satisfy the needs of our seniors, which are growing in leaps and bounds, please take into consideration that Parks and Rec welcomes, if a new senior center is built, the incorporation of having the daycares. It's a good income producing process. It fits in nicely with the building, and I would ask you to sincerely consider that aspect of it.
Thank you. And thank you for the memorandum you gave us. I'll be sure that it goes in the minutes with Debbie. Is there any other, Mark?
No, Maria, again, we're not trying to get back and forth. Jim, I think that when you said something, I want to just correct it. I think the $844,000, that revenue goes into the Parks and Rec revolving fund, not the general fund. But you're right, it's revenue that the town gets into the revolving fund. Just want to make sure that that's correct. Thank you.
Now I'm putting on my other hat,
Oh, there's a second. Oh, okay.
and I'll take it off for respect. It has been a great honor to have served on 2 special committees, the first time in my 79 years on this earth, one being the town manager's task force to study the needs of a senior center in town, and then the second being the select board. I have never in all my adult life served on 2 more hardworking committees than these 2 committees were. It has been mentioned before, and I just will mention it quickly, no stones were left unturned. We did our due diligence. And when the Select Board Building Committee was formed, chaired by Mary Beth Bergeron, we started at ground zero. We didn't take the material and information that we garnered from the town manager's building committee. So we started all over again. We had a diverse group of business people and homeowners. I totally enjoyed the makeup of that committee. Fast forward, this building, the current senior center, we had a lot of dialogue with the architect. And that dialogue brought back, after we brought it to their attention, that there were serious potential issues with asbestos, et cetera, and so forth. And whereas they initially said the building could be renovated, at this point in time, you will never be able to renovate that building properly for the needs of the seniors because of the construction of the building, because of long hallways, because of asbestos issues, and it's just not feasible. You cannot add on a second story. I would hope that the select board would agree to forget about any renovations to Greenwood Center as a replacement center and focus on one of the 4 locations that the building committee has brought forward for your consideration. We had the space. I am sure that we will get the support of the group that was violently opposed to us building over at Bliss Park. People basically have said, stay where you are. Well, we can stay where we are, but with all due respect, we can't stay in a building that was built for school purposes, and we can't reconfigure that building to what we need to have it. So I would hope that you folks will put this on the front burner rather than the back burner and see if we can move forward. Our seniors are getting older. Some of us would like to see something new before we go to heaven. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another resident comment? No? No one else? All right. Select board comments.
I would just say that I volunteered to deliver meals the day before Christmas.
Oh, well,
And first of all, it is very eye-opening how there are, people shut in around town. I believed it, but this, seeing it is really interesting. But they are so happy when I showed up. It was just wanted me to come in and talk to them, and where'd this food come from? Oh my God, on a Saturday? I said, well, it came from the senior center. What? Where'd this food come from? I just, it was really very interesting. I told Amy, I said, count me in next year. It was really fun, actually, so.
yeah. And my understanding is the numbers have increased.
And it is
Yeah.
very well organized, too. You get there, and here's your route, and here's your food, and, the one with the dot goes low sugar, and so, really well done. Well
Yeah.
done.
Sounds great.
It's a great service.
Any other comments? Mark? No? Richard? No? Okay. All right, we will move on then to the town manager reports.
As you can see from the memo, it was with the holidays, I was able to do a little bit of traveling as well and visit with family, so the report is a little light for this meeting. Just a couple of things that have been kicking around. We have been talking about leasing a portion of the land next to the Blinn tennis courts there at the intersection of Bliss Road and Bliss Court for a cell tower. There was a site walk. We've selected Wireless Edge. We forwarded them a draft contract. Depending on their feedback on the contract and their ability to deliver on their promised timelines, we'll be discussing that here at some point in time, I think in the very near future. I don't know if it'll be controversial, but I know I have spoken to plenty of people in the community who live in the center of our town who get terrible cell service. So if you know any of them, make sure that they have their voices heard on this issue as well. It really is it is a good revenue generator for the town, but that really is secondary to the increased level of service for both personal cell phones, but also public safety and other municipal needs. And then the Dwight Road project is continues to move forward. We had another productive session. We're looking at, we actually received late this afternoon a draft of what's called the DIF financing plan, and I think it's looking pretty favorable for the corridor improvements that we've discussed briefly. So I just want to let you know that's continuing to percolate on its own. I didn't have it here, but we did meet with internally with DPW staff, management team, and the design team for the DPW project, and had another good design session, and pared down a few more rooms that we didn't think were needed, and I think have an excellent, really efficient design that we'll be distributing. I think I put a previous draft in the packet last time around. I didn't get the update in time to get it out to you this week, but we'll have an updated draft, and I do plan to present that at the school committee tomorrow night. They've asked me to give some brief remarks about the DPW project, update them, so I will show them our draft site plan like you guys have seen. So I think it's coming along well. That's the part of the project that's kind of exciting when you can see about what our new building can look like, and when you hear the managers talk about the efficiencies they can gain, even just looking at it on paper, it is pretty exciting. A couple of other informational things in your packet. We meet with Maya quarterly to go over our loss experience and our risk portfolio, and I don't know if you've been given that in the package before, but I actually, this is I think a new format that they're using to explain it using graphs and charts, and so I wanted to forward that to you just for informational purposes. You know, I think we have a good relationship with our carrier, with Maya, and I think we do a lot to help keep our risk lower. We do get rebates from them, Maya rewards for doing trainings and things like that. So I think that they're relatively happy with our experience. I think we do a good job, like I said, managing our risk on insurance. And then the second thing is something for the Massachusetts Association of Boards of Health about the new marijuana legalization. This is just kind of a primer that I received from Beverly Hirschhorn. There's been a lot of repeat news media reports. I think the legislature is looking to delay. I don't know if the governor signed the bill, but they were looking to delay the implementation of significant portions of it, because it was done by referendum. The legalization law, I think it really wasn't all that well thought out in terms of the impact at the local level, and having certain amounts be legal before the taxing structure and the enforcement structure has really been developed. So a lot of consternation, I think, at the policymakers and at the public safety level. And so I just wanted to turn this over as kind of good information on that issue as well. And that's about it for me.
Questions? Mark?
Yeah, Stephen, couple of questions. Did you see the note I sent you about the DPW?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just want to make sure. I just for everybody, I asked Stephen a couple of questions based on what we saw I didn't see a fueling station. I assume it's in there.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I just,
There's two purple blocks at the back.
Fine, I
One's
just
a
wanted to
salt
make
shed, one's a fueling station, and those are the two things that are probably moved around the most. And they've made
Because they can move around them. And the other was a comment I gave him because I was down at the town yard getting sand salt out from the pot outside, about make sure we can try to, and that's a tough location to keep it to town residents in, but it's something.
Well, I think you're right, a lot more people are gonna see the salt pile than do currently that drive by it, but I think we haven't talked about the layout, but there's ample parking and green space buffering in the front of the building, so the parking area for employees and the public will be right off of Dwight Road. There'll be two driveways, one in, one out, but similarly located to where the driveway is now for the tennis club. That is, if everything gets approved, the way as planned. And so vehicles will enter in one side, and then town vehicles will go through a gate that will actually work, it'll be automated, and go into the back of the site, and then circle around whether they get washed or load salt or load up equipment, and then come back around through another gate out the front. members of the public who want to come get a recycling bin or, do whatever can come and park in the front. And I'm confident there'll be an area in the front where we will be able to continue that the availability of sand and salt.
Right, I just thought that was a good practice. The other,
Well, the other thing, or the other thing, alternative is the recycling center is going to stay right where it is, and so we may expand the recycling center as a part of the project and incorporate actually a much more user-friendly,
whatever, yeah.
that's
Okay.
not right on the road.
Right. Yeah, the other question, Stephen, I had, and this comes back to my history of working for a Fortune 50 chemical company where safety was crazy, kind of a most important thing we did. And I read through the MIA report, and I guess the question I have is, what programs, or I don't even need to know what programs, I guess the better question is, are you comfortable with the programs we have in place for safety and safety reduction? I saw that there were some things that weren't trending beautifully. I think if I saw that at Solutia or Monsanto or Eastman Chemical or whatever it is now, there'd be all kinds of wild, crazy things going on with some of those trends. And I'm just hoping that it's taken as seriously here as it is there, not just because we get financial credits, but because we don't want to hurt the people who work for us.
Yeah, I think, yes, the answer is I am comfortable that you can't control for every variable. There are times where people, especially when they've been working for a long time, their body starts to break down, like DPW or police or fire are really notable in this regard. But we do get, and I think Paul Pasturzik regularly reports on the Maya credits when we get them, and usually it's itemized, the things that we did to earn the credits, and I forward those to the select board. They have Maya has a sheet, or a series of sheets of the trainings they offer and the credits that they're worth. And Paul really takes the lead on distributing those to department heads and pushes them to enroll either themselves or employees in these training programs, whether it's chainsaw safety or, reducing back injuries or things like that. So we do a good job, but you can't control for a variable. But we do review this carefully, and when there are things that, especially our advisor from Maya points out and says, if you did X, you could lower this number, we certainly pursue that as, to the fullest extent that we can.
Yeah, we'll have a philosophical discussion on your comment, you can't control everything, because where I grew up, you can't control, they think you can't control everything, and that's what they teach, but that's more philosophical. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. I'm going to switch things up because I know there's some people waiting here under the new business. Are you here from Bay Path University? You want to do your presentation? So we'll jump down to the Elmore Design Collaborative and regarding the main entrance improvements for Bay Path University.
Tom, do you need the projector, or are we just using the boards?
Just the boards.
Okay.
Good evening, folks. My name is Mike Giampietro, Vice President of Finance Administration at Bay Path. We have Tom Elmore here. Tom's our consultant, landscape architect, and we'll take you through the proposal, some improvements we want to make that impact the town's right away at the entrance to the university. And so I'll turn it over to Tom.
Thank you. It's my first
Tom,
time.
you're going to have to get near a microphone, even though it's not for this room, so that people in broadcast can hear you.
Hold it.
Nah, you're fine.
I think
Yeah.
you're right.
I'll
Yeah.
talk louder.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is my first time presenting in front of any committees here in town of Long Meadow.
You're in deep trouble.
I think what we have is a very simple and straightforward proposal. But what I want to do is set the stage for you. The Long Meadow Street is here, and the main entrance drive is here, and it goes down to Deepwood Hall, which is the president's office on campus. The iconic brick walls, which are a few years old, with the campus name on them, is, you can see here. And what we're trying to do is to improve pedestrian access from the campus out to Long Meadow Street, as well as introduce some curbing and some sidewalks. So presently there's curbing on Long Meadow Street. It's an asphalt curb. It's 2 to 3 to 4 inches tall. It's in rough shape depending on where you are physically. And what we're proposing to do is to connect with a vertical curb starting out on the street and bringing it into the site on both sides. The area closest to the street and just beyond the walls will be a vertical curb, the straight curb, and then it'll transition and come into the campus with the sloped curb, which is more or less the campus standard. And the reason for that change is it's difficult to do a sidewalk adjacent to the sloped curb because of the angle of the curbing. In addition to the walkways, we're proposing to reconfigure this area here, take out the two legs, add in two accessible handicap ramps with tactile strips, and on the north side, take out about 8 feet of walkway and make it an accessible ramp with a tactile strip. And then come into the site with a 4-foot wide sidewalk. And within the right-of-way, we'll be adding one street light, which will match the existing lights along the sidewalk.
Can you
And that sums it
just
up.
repeat, adding a street light that faces which,
Well, there's a street light, pedestrian lights along the
Oh.
walkway.
so pedestrian?
Sidewalk lighting.
Oh, okay.
Is what I
Okay,
Yeah,
so-
not the
Okay,
overhead.
thank you. Okay,
Um,
thanks, Mike.
And on this, did they get the sheets?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got copies of those.
There's a picture of the standard lights that we have. And so we'll be adding one on the back side of the wall, and then every 50 feet, alternating down the entrance drive to enhance the safety, really, for that walkway.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Any comments, Stephen?
I do. So one of the things that we did research was as some of you know, the construction of the walls where the signage is governed by a license agreement. Typically, the work that they're proposing really could fall under the objects in the tree belt policy, which is town manager or select board approval. And I wanted to bring it to you all because it's a relatively permanent improvement to the area inside the right-of-way, which is essentially the quote town's land. I support the project. I think it's, as you can see from the photos, it really is kind of a disconnect to not have the pedestrian sidewalks lead all the way down into campus. I know we see Bay Path students walking all over as a part of our community or riding their blue bikes. But the license agreement exists for the walls, and so I wanted to bring it to the board's attention to suggest either we just approve the proposed work under the objects in the tree belt policy, which would be the easiest thing, and I think Bay Path is interested in that as well, or we could kind of get into the license agreement, but I just wanted to give the board the information and the choice of how they want to proceed. There's no decision point that needs to be made tonight. I think we just need to give them some guidance on the direction the board wants to go and a timeline.
Any questions?
Yeah, the details, is that granite curbing?
Granite curbing, 6-inch tall.
6-inch, and it's going to melt back into asphalt curbing on the town side?
See it in the-
Yes, out here, they'll have to modify the last 12
Right.
inches to get it down to the asphalt. We did invite Andy and Mario from engineering DPW out, and we talked to them about the radius changes and the handicap access ramps, and they were the ones that informed us that Mass Highway likes the tactile warning strips, especially the yellow versus the red.
And we actually installed those at the sidewalks we put in the south end, and the
Yeah.
north end of town.
Everywhere we're doing sidewalks now, it's the standard.
Yeah, it's a standard.
Yeah.
So yes, there will be that transition, and that final segment of granite curtain will have to be sawn to meet down flush with.
Yeah,
the,
and you got
yes.
non-mountable coming around, and then you turn mountable back into the other part? Mountable curb, you said you had a,
The transition line is about here.
Right.
And then this will be sloping coming into campus. And then from here out will be the 6-inch vertical curve.
Richard, there's
And
some
on either
detail
side
in,
of
in one of the drawings that we were sent showing the
yeah.
curbs.
And then there'll be transition sections to go from flush to 6-inch reveal and all of that. So actually, the
Yeah, you got it.
details for that were taken right from Mass Highway standards.
Yeah, I just got it.
Any other questions? Mark?
Yeah, I don't know if my question is for you folks or for Stephen. I support this. I think it's a great improvement to the town. The issue for me is, when. It's not if, but it's when. And maybe 30, 50, 70 years from now, we got to dig that up to replace the utilities that are underneath there. Is how do we show as a record that the town doesn't have to pay to replace and fix all this stuff because it wasn't a town betterment? And the same issue to some degree came up with the wall. When we talked about the wall, Mike, you remember
Right.
you were here. And my question is how, and I think that's why we use the license agreement rather than just the tree belt policy, so that there was that more permanent record, so that the town was incurring no long-term liability for improvement. I think it's a great idea, and I hope we never have to dig it up, and certainly not in the next 15 or 20 years, but someday, somebody's gonna have to put something through there, and that, it makes for a pretty expensive repair if the town has to do it. So Stephen, the question is, because of that concern, should we continue by maybe extending or modifying that license agreement to include these improvements, or however we do it? And I just, that's my only concern, but I think it's great.
To answer your question, the license agreement continues in perpetuity. And so I think it contemplates, some uses, but basically I'm sure there was an attachment that exhibit B, I'm sorry, improvements depicted in Exhibit A. I mean, you could certainly do an amendment to the license agreement with its own exhibit showing this work, and that'd be a pretty light lift. And then just get it, I think this has been recorded, get a couple of pages recorded with, because it'll be tied to 588, it'll be tied to the property 588 Long Meadow Street, and we'll have a copy as well. I mean, it could be that simple. I agree, like I said, it's a tough call because we already have it. If we didn't have this agreement, I would suggest that it's easy to approve under the policy, but since we have a license agreement that governs, now they are vertical improvements, the signs versus the horizontal, but to me, it's the same principle. So if the board would prefer to see that, I can certainly get that drafted fairly quickly, and get that back for the next agenda.
Mike, what was your timetable to want it? I assume the spring you were looking at?
Spring or summer, so we have time.
We would have time if we took that
Sure,
approach.
yes.
Okay.
Are we keeping the Bay Path University in the loop about the whole TIP project and what's
Yeah.
going to be happening on Long Meadow Street and hopefully the near future,
I
which would
don't know
affect?
if they're in the loop, but that's, 3 years out anyway.
3 years out.
2020, and I think
Yeah.
if the stuff they're talking about would be impacted, it would be replaced as part of the project, because it would be a very, very, very small amount of work compared to the overall scale of the whole project. Lots of things that have been put in would have to be,
Right.
touched and replaced. So
I just want you to be aware and understand the conversations that are occurring, and we're saying 3 years out, but who knows what our timeline is going to be on
they'll get a
that.
lot of benefit out of it between now and then. And it may not even be impacted by the project. We don't know if right now, I think the limit of the project is south of there.
And I think most of the improvements, we're talking pedestrian, which is fabulous.
Right.
And I guess I never realized you didn't have a sidewalk going up.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it does seem logical to go with. I support the project too, and we'll just wait for the town manager to see which is the best method to go forward on. Anyone else have concerns or comments about it?
Well, you're just
Thank you.
proposing an addendum, aren't you?
Yeah, I think it would just be an amendment to license agreement.
Yeah.
The license agreement shall include additional improvements depicted here as exhibit, C or something like that. And I can bring that back to the board's
Do you
consideration.
need us to vote tonight?
I was
Or do
wondering,
you
is there,
want to-
is there a desire on the board to have it brought back? I mean, we know what he's gonna do with it.
If you want to authorize me to, on behalf of the board, enter into an amendment to the license agreement, we could do that and prevent him from coming back, and then I can just, once he and I work it out and sign it, I'll just give the board a copy.
I
Is
don't
there
know
a-
if Mike needs to come back.
I don't think so. I don't
Is there a
think so.
motion?
Yeah, so move. So move to adopt with the addendum modification as recommended by the town manager.
Do you have that, Debbie?
And that's like repeat it again.
I can't. It was all the energy I had. The motion is to approve the proposal as delivered, well, with the town manager making an addendum to the original licensing agreement.
And to authorize me to, or do you guys want to sign the license agreement?
I think we have to, don't we?
You probably do it to transfer, yep.
Yeah,
So
so
I'll bring it back for board
It's
signature.
got to come back anyway, so. yeah.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bill. And any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, thank you very much, and you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, so we'll move back up to old business, approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of December 19th?
I move we approve the minutes of the regular select board meeting of December 19th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? And, okay. We're going back to the age-friendly communities. We discussed this at our last meeting, and more information was requested. We gave chance for people to read the previous things that were sent in, and also it happens that West Springfield just became an age-friendly community. And I thought that was a very good article that seemed to describe a general overview of what we're talking about, which is, I think, a planning tool as well as a possibility of grant money coming down the future. Stephen, you actually put together an actual resolution that went into the packet.
Yeah, so in the packet, there's and actually, it is still entitled Model Local Executive Order, because I wanted to give the context that this was something the World Health Organization sent out in their materials. We customized it a little bit for Long Meadow. It's, there's a lot more in it than I would probably put if I was writing it from scratch, but I wanted to give the board kind of the full scope of what they're doing. It does, I think to me, the resolution, it talks about some demographic information, population trends in the aging community and what's important in the aging community, that I think some of the stuff that came from the WHO, the World Health Organization, certainly applies to Long Meadow. I think it's a lot of the stuff is universal. And they talked about, outdoor, the priorities for the quality of, there's 8 domains of community life that influence the health and quality of life for older people: outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation and employment, communication and information, community support, and health services. Just to connect back to Bill's comments and select board comments, I actually think the town of Long Meadow does a very good job at all of these things with the resources that we have. I think if we had, greater resources, we would do more, but I think we do a pretty good job covering it as it is. That's why I didn't overthink the resolution, because I thought it really was really approachable for us. And just like I said, we just customized it with some of our own demographic data.
Mark?
Yeah, I read through the proclamation here, or whatever it is, the World Health Organization, it's called Model Executive Order. And I was great right down to the part that says, now therefore, and further in recognition of existing efforts, we order and direct the town manager to convene a blue ribbon commission. That was a little bit much for me, to tell you the truth, that we don't really have blue ribbon commissions in the town, and would hate to put this one different from any of our other committees in town. And so I was thinking about, rather than call it a blue ribbon commission, we ought to just call it another one of our committees. And then I'm saying to myself, but don't we already have a committee that deals with the issues of the aging and the Council on Aging? And why wouldn't we add this to the responsibilities of the Council on Aging and give them these responsibilities as part of what they're also doing, which, to my mind, many of these, responsibilities are, and I'll read it for the people at home, indicated what they're doing is the 8 domains of life: outdoor spaces and buildings, transportation, housing, social participation, respect and social inclusion, civic participation in employment, communications, information, community support, and health service. I mean, that just fits so well into what we would ask them to be advising the select board and the town manager on. Why wouldn't we just roll this into it? And I understand how neat it is to say we've got a blue ribbon commission, but, you know.
There's an
was-
application to the AARP and World Health Organization that follows this. I'd have to double check to make sure that, I'm sure it's fine. I mean, I'm sure if we said even if we called it Blue Ribbon Commission and it's just our Council on Aging, I think it's fine. I just didn't know if that Blue Ribbon Commission was a thing that they wanted as part of their application process, but it's a
Right.
difference.
The one thing we're missing, though, in the COA is it says we're talking about seeks input from diverse stakeholders. And if you just have the COA, you don't really have that diverse stakeholders from the rest of the community. And
Well, it doesn't mean that they can't seek the input from diverse stakeholders. I mean, there's nothing keeping them from doing that. You know, anyway, it seems to me that it would, you know, I'm just trying not to create a second organization to do something that we have a group already in place to do. Very honestly, I'm concerned about, can we really recruit the right number of people to do this? Are we setting ourselves up for one more hour of interviews for positions? And
Well-
I think it's a great idea. I just don't know that we need to duplicate.
it might be
what we got.
worth to say, instead, direct the COA, but then we really should evaluate in 1 year to see if it's, the COA feels that they really, this is something that's going to meet
I'm
into
good with
theirs.
that. Let's
And
set it
then-
up for a
and
period of
see
time.
how the
That's-
first,
that's okay with me.
year goes and see if they really need to have a more cohesive group, or the COA could invite members of the Parks and Rec, Planning, and everyone else and have joint meetings with them. But again, this is, why don't we say to direct a commission, and then you can see, maybe the COA is not going to want to take this full task on, because that's really changing their mission or directive.
I mean, I'm torn because, I mean, they just redid their bylaws and parts of this really are beyond the scope of the COA.
Yeah.
But I also agree with Mark that the COA could be the commission for the purposes of fulfilling what we're doing in this resolution. And like you said, they could have hearings or meetings where they invite the town engineer, or they invite, you know, the fire chief, and they ask him specific questions and kind of get feedback on the 8, you know, they invite the chair of the park board or the Parks and Rec director and kind of get input from the stakeholders. I hadn't thought of using the COA board, to be honest with you, but I think I will agree with Mark's sense of efficiency, that I think that they could probably do it. And I mean, obviously, they're going to be supported by town personnel, and if we identify others, I think I would recommend making that change. And I think if it just turns out that the job isn't fit for them or doesn't go well, we can come back and change it. But I don't want to send the document back for a minor change like that and then come back.
Right,
You know.
I agree. The COA did vote to support the, us becoming age-friendly community.
So they volunteered for the job.
Oh, I'm not
There
sure
you go.
if that means they volunteered to take on the whole thing, but they do support the concept, yeah. Mhm.
My only comment, and more importantly, you know, I'd hate to create a second organization that, you know, if you have a job here and a job here, and there's you know, some overlap in between. I don't know if that overlap is 10% or 60%, but the extent there is, why would we do that?
There's not much of a
And-
job
And if
to it
it's
anyway.
zero overlap, then that's fine, but I don't think there is. I think there is overlap.
Okay.
And I think it says, yeah, I mean, yeah, so to boil it down, what the job is to engage in the World Health Organization age-friendly cities and communities. Shall actively seek input from others. It's not, there's not like an assignment or a deliverable
Right.
that they must achieve. I think it really is more making sure that there's a group of people that are actively looking out for the needs of, not the needs of seniors, actively examining our community and how it fares on those 8 elements. Like I said, I would
gives them
support
a-
using the council on
Yeah,
aging.
it gives them a stronger voice and actually a little bit of more power there to really have their voice heard. So, yeah, I would say, and then if they come back and decide that they want to really only do part of it or something, we can reconsider, but at least we could be moving forward on the first step, because you have to apply. Isn't there, you have to apply?
There's an application you have
There's
to
an
fill out.
application now
Yeah.
that has to
And
go
like I
through.
said, I think I'd recommend approving the resolution, making the change from Blue Ribbon Commission to the Council on Aging, and then go with that. We'll do the application. And we'll just see where it goes. If we need to make a change, if it turns out that it's okay to be age-friendly but not hostile to your COA board by giving them unasked, unrequested work, then we'll have to change. But I think that fits.
So Marie, I hope everybody's got it from, but the next to last paragraph, I would suggest we just change it to further we order and direct the Council on Aging to evaluate opportunities to engage in the WHO age-friendly cities and communities. The Council on Aging shall actively seek input from diverse stakeholders, period.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that works.
that would work. But we still are also, at some point in time, I'm trying to read back and think, do we direct you to apply? Because I remember the original letter or resolution we were looking at, we had to direct the town manager to apply, to form an application.
I haven't seen that. I mean, I don't.
Because it doesn't say anywhere, but I
think
guess
it's
it's
I think
inferred that you now have to apply, right?
Yeah,
So-
I mean, to some extent, I think it's more of just an endorsement, like something in the official record, if you will, that says that the town is supportive. I mean, if it's, we can apply for the stuff.
Okay.
I don't think we need a special under. I mean, they wrote this for every community in the world.
Yeah. So this is inferred that you're going to, once you get this, even though we're not
Yeah.
directing you to
This
do
is part of the
anything,
application.
you will continue to apply.
We're going to direct the Council on Aging,
So,
Board of Directors, the Council on Aging.
yeah. Further, we order and direct the Council on Aging to evaluate opportunities to engage in the WHO age-friendly cities and communities. Council on Aging shall actively seek input from diverse stakeholders. I don't know the last paragraph is even needed. This order supersedes any previous order's proclamation.
Yeah, I'd strike that.
We ought to strike that one.
But okay, and obviously, it remains in effect until we rescind it. That's true of all policies.
So, fine, we'll keep the sentence that says this, where it says this executive order, we'll change it to this policy. Okay? Fine, Steve, we'll just,
Just leave it, it doesn't matter.
You'll email Debbie and I the corrected paragraph.
I would just leave the last paragraph, it doesn't matter.
you want us to say this order supersedes? any
Why
other
not?
previous-
It's-
'cause it's not an.
Because there weren't any.
There weren't any, so. Well, there is a previous directive if we want to be particular about the COA's mission, now that
Yeah,
we've
but it's not-
totally revamped what they have to
But it's not an executive
do.
order, it's a select board policy.
Yeah, so should we say,
And I will
this?
change
Should we call it a policy rather
Yes.
than executive order?
Yes.
And then it will go into our policy packet. I think Complete Streets is in our policy packet, isn't it?
It's not a policy, it's the Town of Long Meadow, it's the Town of Long Meadow Select Board resolution on being an age-friendly community or something like that.
Okay. Did we totally confuse you, Stephen, or?
I'm right with you.
Okay. There any other comments or questions? Because and is there a motion?
Mark made the motion.
Did you make that in the form of a motion, Mark?
Sure.
Okay,
Okay,
so what's your
second.
motion? Okay, so the
Okay.
motion is,
To approve the resolution as amended.
okay. And Richard, you seconded it?
Second,
So,
And-
so can I, before we vote, can I just go over what the changes are that we've
Yeah.
made to it? Okay,
Yes.
so the top of it now says model, or it doesn't say model, it says select board resolution. Okay? World Health Organization, Global Network of Age-Friendly Cities and Communities, nothing changes until the next to last paragraph. Okay? We're gonna change any references to executive, and I don't think there are any, but any executive orders end up being policies. And the next last paragraph is gonna say, further, we order and direct Council on Aging to evaluate opportunities to engage in the WHO age-friendly cities and communities. The Council on Aging shall actively seek input to diverse stakeholders. The final paragraph will say, the select board resolution shall take effect immediately and shall remain in effect until such time as the select board rescinds it.
Is that okay with your second, Richard? Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, thank you. All right, moving along is the building committee. And I asked the town manager to take that huge thing that came from Jody, narrow it down a bit, I also had called the other town manager, like Richard had requested, and we had a long discussion, and we made a few changes, and one of the things that she emphasized was an important change, which was actually in the resolution in the packet last time, in the last meeting, was that it's not just new building, it's also any renovations, I believe, over 50,000, Stephen? She said that was an important change so that there is a consistency of when we're looking, that we're putting money in buildings and when we're jumping into the new. And she said it all goes in. Then the other change that we have, other than what Stephen put in, is, Bill, you want to talk about what you found and you thought was an interesting addition to that?
Yeah, I looked at a bunch of examples of this from other towns they've done, and you know, these committees are all over the place. I mean, Mark made a good point last time with, you know, we have a capital planning committee. Isn't that something they should be doing? But they really don't, you know, they're all over the place. They don't specifically look at site selection like what these task forces have done. If you had continuity all these years, all the work that Mary Beth did, somebody doesn't have to go back and do that. I really think that we need, and Mark made also the point that we don't have that many buildings, but if you think about it, you could have a permanent building committee be busy for the next 10 years at least, because you have these projects coming one after another, DPW, you know, senior center, two schools, and they're gonna be busy for a while, and when at some point they're not, they can meet once a month or something like that. One of the things that I suggested that be added to what was in the packet was that after, in the first paragraph, it said, therefore, members who serve 3-year terms, and I said, the composition of the committee shall include, to the extent possible, one attorney, one architect, one engineer, and an individual who's primarily engaged in the construction business. Not that you wouldn't try to do that, but it's, I think, just pointing that out. And then, I've seen it in a couple of places where when there's a school project, the school committee can appoint a member of their committee temporarily to the permanent building committee, or whoever they want to designate. And I think that part of the reason for that is then you don't have to form a new school committee, school building committee. If that's not the case,
But by state law, you
doesn't.
have to, though.
I've seen where, well, then this.
You don't have to have a separate committee, but the state has different makeup from that. You'll
Okay.
have to add more than
Okay,
just that
okay.
person.
Well,
That-
what
I mean, that would be the issue.
That would be my intent there. If
Right.
that doesn't accomplish it, then whatever does, maybe you have to add another.
I think there would be Mark is right in that there's certain roster that the MSBA requires.
Yeah.
And I think we would just have to work out locally to make sure that a few members of that there's crossover. So some members of our permanent building committee have seats on our school building committee. And I think that's how I don't think the permanent building committee would replace it. And I think, you know, and it's not just building schools. There can be additions, there can be,
Right.
you know, major HVAC upgrades. I mean, there's a lot of things that a permanent building committee could consider for the schools that don't include building new schools.
Right.
And I do think it's good that in those situations, to include someone on the, to include someone from the school committee for the purposes of those projects. The other thing I would say is, I like the specification of the makeup of the committee. One of the things about the capital planning committee is there's no requirements for that kind of specialization, and we've been saying since the beginning that and Jody was clear on this, that the permanent building committees that work really well have people who are experts in the field.
Right.
You know, the capital planning committee, who will be presenting to you guys in a couple of weeks, I mean, they put in a lot of time and effort, and they've worked really hard to understand the information we've given them. But it's two accountants, a physician, you know, and
Right.
they're not specialists. And I think that's where the permanent building committees are an acknowledgement that on certain building projects, you just simply need a higher level of specialization and still be members of the community, not, you know, people who are paid staff, so to speak.
Right.
So you like the idea of keeping his addition here on the composition of the committee
Yeah,
shall
definitely.
include?
Yeah, the only question that, you know, I am one, and I'm an engineer, and I gotta tell you, I'm a chemical engineer, and that does no good helping somebody with.
Good point. I had
And I don't know
seen
if it's a mechanical engineer or a
Civil.
engineer or something, but, you know, you don't want an electrical, well, maybe you do, but.
So should we say civil
engineer?
engineer? Is that your recommendation, Mark?
Civil or mechanical?
Civil/mechanical. The other question I had on the composition is, do we want a member of the select board and the school committee on this, or do you just want liaisons to this school building committee? What do you think is the best way for that to work, Richard?
The question is,
I ain't given it any thought, Marie.
does the building committee report to the select board? Are they
Yes.
advisory to the select board?
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I'd say you can go the route of advisory rather than having to be a member of it. I think if it comes back here anyway,
Yeah.
And the other thing we did is, the other change I made was, I included a paragraph that the permanent, we had that long document with policies and procedures that we got, that kind of complicated the issue. So I decided, just give the charge to writing their own policies and procedures to the committee, and they can kind of figure out their own rule book. But that the select board's gonna review and approve those policies and procedures. And so the board really still retains control over how they go about their business, but they can figure out how they can make it work for themselves.
Okay. Is there any other changes other than the first change that Bill put in that we want to make in this committee charge?
The only thing I would say is that now this second paragraph may not accomplish what I, thought it might accomplish.
the problem, Bill, the problem is that, and it's not just the school project, it's any MSBA-funded project. We can do school projects on our own, and as long as the town pays for it, we can do anything we want to. If it's an MSBA-funded project, as Stephen said, they prescribe the makeup of the school building committee pretty specifically. There's very few at-large members that they allow, and so I think we differentiate a school project from an MS. My
Well, then
personal
maybe
opinion
this is
is,
all the way it is. It doesn't say, it doesn't have anything to do with the,
yeah, my problem is
MSBA.
if it's, right, if it's an MSBA project, this is out anyway, and maybe we just say that this, we put in a sentence that relates how this committee will work with an MSBA required building committee.
That's a minimum requirement though, isn't it, Mark, on MSBA?
Right, and so it might be that these people will be supplemental to an MSBA
Right.
required building. In other words, you know, if the MSBA says you need these 15 people, say, fine, we're gonna add these 6 people to it because
Right.
they're on our permanent building committee.
So
And I'm good with that, so that,
What about that line? Is there a line, any future MSBA shall include the building committee?
I don't know that you can prescribe that to the MSBA. You can't
You can't?
bind the town to MSBA's rules. The MSBA could change their rules.
Okay.
So let me suggest this, because I think that, you want to keep the schools the town owns the buildings. Not the school, the schools no longer own their buildings. That was a part of the charter change. So I would suggest that maybe instead of what you have here, Bill, I think capture the spirit by saying, the select board and the school committee shall appoint liaisons to the permanent building committee, and then, so there's always a seat at the table for a select board member and a school committee non-voting, but the point of the permanent building committee, well, first of all, they don't vote, they just advise, but the point is that they are experts in the field of construction trades and building trades. And so the school committee liaison is probably not gonna come to a bunch of meetings about,
Right.
renovating town hall or the community house, but if we were doing a big boiler project at an elementary school, the school committee member would want to attend those meetings. So by making it a liaison from both the select board, school committee, and capital planning committee should all be represented by liaisons.
Oh, so, select board, school committee, and capital planning shall or may?
May appoint liaisons.
Okay. May appoint liaisons. How does that other addition sound?
That's fine.
That sounds good?
Yeah, that's fine.
All
And
right.
strike the second paragraph that he had. Right.
But I think the spirit of it's there, but we'll have to see what the MSBA requires at the time that we're beginning the school project.
That, I think, is something that, once we impanel the permanent building committee, we give them a charge of figuring out how they will interact with the school building committee as required by MSBA.
Well, should that be one of the additional responsibilities?
You know, I think it's when they develop their bylaws,
It'll come through.
yeah. I say bylaws, their policies or whatever.
Stephen, can I add, because I was just trying to type this into this thing. School committee, select board, and capital planning committee may appoint, can I add the word non-voting liaisons to this committee?
And the other change was under engineer, civil/mechanical engineer,
And/or civil ones.
and/or, okay.
Thank you.
Or structural. I mean, all three would be good.
Yes,
Because civil is like site work
civil, mechanical,
or structural.
or structural. Okay. And then we won't put it in here, but because we now have a situation where we have a DPW building committee and we have adult building committee, and
That's the
it'd be
reason-
nice to have.
That's the reason we're talking about
Right,
this.
but it'd be nice to have some of that, both additions from all of those.
Yeah.
that-
And there's no saying the permanent building committee couldn't ad hoc another committee out to help them too.
Yeah.
I mean, anything could take place. out there.
So maybe then in the additional additional responsibilities, item 1 could be, basically review the work of previous, building committees. Something like that. Because then that will basically tie this new permanent building commit, it'll obligate them to
Yeah.
go back and look at the work of the Adult Center Building Committee and the DPW
Well,
Committee.
It's the strongest step towards formalization of our processes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we've done.
Right.
And this is likely the biggest thing that we've done in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
If we follow through appropriately, because that starts to set the future, a long-range good future where, how Mark's done a study, I done a study, and everybody's doing a study, but we can't find pieces of them now. And it brings it under one umbrella. It's a living document. That group, that if it's put in right, that'll live for years and years and years in this community.
So review the plans of previous committees.
Review work of previous building committees.
Review reports of previous building committees.
All right, so that's 3 changes, and has Debbie kept up with all that? Or do you want us to reread that?
She's gonna go back to
Okay.
the video.
Yeah.
You got it?
I got it here too, Steve. I got
do you?
it. It's pretty straightforward.
I didn't write it down, so don't ask me tomorrow, because I'll
Well,
forgot
let
by
me-
then.
What I put down, Stephen, is down at the paragraph that starts, the function and duties of the permanent town building committee shall be. Down at the bottom, it says, in addition, the committee shall review the reports of previous committees and serve as an advisory design review committee and review new construction and/or renovations of town buildings.
I was thinking that review would go in the additional responsibilities would be to review, but it's
Yeah,
fine
he's
either
putting
place.
it, yeah.
I was putting it in the serial list below, but it's fine either place, I don't care.
We can put it in there.
I think it's easier just to stick it in the bottom.
Yeah, and the bullet, because it's a standalone task, it's not a repeating.
And it
task.
won't be, yeah, it won't be repeating. Once they've done that, then hopefully it will be all the unity theory of the universe.
Right.
Or is there a motion to approve the committee charge as written with amendments?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Yay. Very exciting. Okay. Now, moving to set annual town election date. I know that Mark had a few questions to make sure,
Been answered?
and it was all taken care of. The only thing I'm going to, this doesn't quite fit in with this, but I do want to say, we were having a discussion today with the town moderator in regards to the fact it's going to be a huge Springtown meeting, and does she really want to do this for one night or 2 nights? And she said that's really in our decision-making process as a select board. So we're not going to really decide on that tonight.
That has nothing to do with the election.
No, it has nothing to do with the election, but I wanted to say, if we did go to 2 nights, I checked to make sure there was no problem with the whole idea of subsequent articles, and there's still time, even if we end up expanding that. So that will be on a future agenda, and it won't affect this annual town election. So is there a motion to approve the recommendation of the town clerk?
I'd like to get more specific. I move to approve the April 25th as a preliminary, the date of the April 25th, 2017 as the date of the preliminary town election, and if needed, and June 13th, 2017 as the date of the town election. With the other dates for last day to register and posting warrants and posting nominating papers as stated in the motion, in the memo from the town clerk.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? And Mark, I want to thank you. It was nice that you were able to get your questions answered ahead of time.
Yeah, well, that's
And
what I
that really-
figured, otherwise we'd be sitting here and.
Yeah,
no,
and going
so-
back. So,
And Kathy, just so everybody knows, I asked Kathy because I was concerned that under the unlikely event that our town meeting ends up with somebody having a question and wanting to take it to a referendum, was there enough time between the scheduled town meeting, which we've already scheduled, and the proposed election date, so that she could get a referendum, go through that process? And she had already taken that into consideration, and so there is.
and so what I was
I
saying
figured the
before,
answer was yes.
if we end up with 2 nights, there's still time. Yeah, and we'll have to make that decision, have that discussion at another meeting fairly soon if we're going to be posting and everything else. All right, so moving on to the last
The
thing.
other thing is we have
Yeah.
to notify the school to see if the gym is available.
Available. Well, we should probably just put, whether it's a rollover or it's a decision that the select board is making that we're going to have so many warrants on one night and so many warrants on another, we always should have room for a rollover because there's a lot on. And we're not sure what citizens petitions will come into.
How many articles are going to be, we don't know how many.
Well, we're talking about the very large topics that are going to be handled are going to be about 5 or 6, and then after that, we have a lot of bylaws, and we have the budget, and it's just
Yeah, I was reading
getting
some
a
old
little-
documents today. Some of the previous meetings, they had 40-some articles.
Wow.
Oh, they were.
Oh, see, so we're
Yeah.
babies.
Yeah, we're spoiled. Yeah.
Oh, back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, back
Yeah.
in the days, 40-some articles.
But they probably just,
I don't know. No, there was some stuff that was defeated and debated and modified on the floor. It's interesting. It was
well, I think just to, if you tie back the pieces of the previous town manager reports, the reason why we're having this discussion is because there's a potential for a DPW, for 2 big votes on DPW, both a site acquisition vote and a funding vote.
Right.
There's the DIF district project, which would require a town meeting vote that is on schedule for this annual town meeting, which would, if approved, would lead to major corridor improvements along Dwyer Road. There's a stormwater utility that we've been working on
Yeah.
that is gonna be ready.
Is that going to be ready?
It's gonna be ready. There's further work on Greenwood Park, on site planning Greenwood Park.
Design
and
money.
some design
Mhm.
funds to continue that effort. There's, and then the budget, which, Paul Sturzik and I are working on it, and, as we've been reporting all the way along, it's gonna be tight again.
Yeah.
Every year, it's, we're down to clawing for a few grand here and there to get a $65 million budget across the finish line in a balanced way. So it's not an insignificant, and then we don't, there are a lot of warrant articles out there that we don't even know may exist yet. So that's why, I think given the importance of a lot of things we're targeting for that annual town meeting, I think the discretion's a better part of valor in making sure we're prepared.
How many times have we done 2-night meeting in the history?
Oh,
Never?
wow.
That's the problem.
That
I
should
don't
be
remember
interesting.
ever doing it.
All I remember
Yeah.
is the aversion to a 2-night meeting was so strong that we were ramming things through 3 or 4 at a time.
Yeah, 4 and 5 at a
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, at 12:30 at night, in the morning,
Mhm.
in our last town meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
That wasn't good.
Well, it was democracy in action.
Yeah. You call it democracy.
Okay. All right, so the very last thing is the warrant article submission schedule. The town manager put it in here, and departments are due February 28th, and citizens petitions are also due no later than Tuesday, February 28th. And do you need us to vote on that, Stephen?
I don't know if you. I think you should vote to codify the schedule.
Right. And then the warrant signing by March 20th. All of this is very tight. You have a lot to get done before that warrant article. I know, no problem, huh? Between the full design of Greenwood and we haven't even started throwing bylaws at
Do
you
you remember
yet.
the last meeting where we had this conversation about,
Yes.
you're like, can you get this done? And I said, nah, we'll do the best we can.
Yeah. You'll get it done.
That's what we're
Mark?
talking
Well, yeah, I'm concerned because we have these dates and we put all this in there, and then it all falls apart with this open the warrant, close the warrant stuff. And, you know, and the fact is that we can say citizen petition articles are due in the select board office no later than noon on Tuesday, February 28, 2017. And the fact is, as we're sitting here, not one of us ought to believe that that's actually going to be the last date. And so, you know, either we're going to put it in here and we're going to actually do this, or we're not going to, why am I going to vote on it? And I'm being deadly serious here, because
So you're
there's a
saying.
lot of people who take this to heart and say, oh my goodness, I guess I missed it, when in fact, they didn't. And it's the, you know, I don't know if it's the sneaky Pete or it's the wise owl who ends up saying, I'm gonna submit it on Wednesday or Thursday or whatever it is, because the select board's probably gonna open and close this warrant 15 times up until, you know, May 1st. And as soon as they open it up, boom, this thing slips in.
What do you want to say, March 6th then?
I don't know what I wanna say. My question is, when are we gonna actually close the warrant and keep it closed?
Well, hopefully March 6th, unless we mess up again, because there's a couple of things. We got to publish the warrant. Also, the town moderator was talking today about setting up a forum on the informational forum and something that people can discuss in the various warrant articles, and she needs to have the warrant actually published and out in people's hands before she can do that. She was looking at the last, so if we start, you know, moving it out, all of a sudden things are going to start falling down.
I think we've really cleaned up that process as well in the last few town meetings, Mark, and I think we have this discussion every time. But I think, you know, there is administrative requirements associated with the certification of signatures on petitions, as well as prepping the warrant for distribution to the publisher. And that's why we try and set the final date of having it closed and posted as soon as possible, because of the amount of time we spend, you know, finalizing it.
Then, if that's the case, Stephen, excuse me, Richard, if that's the case, then that's what we ought to stay, and that's what we ought to stick to the extent that we say, you know, the town clerk will not work to certify signatures for petitions submitted after February 20. I'm good with that. That says, if you want a citizen's petition to come in here, you know, and you want to get your signature certified, you need to get, and that's got nothing to do with the issues we ran into before with, can we certify the petition, you know, can it slip in, can it slip out, that kind of thing. So I'm okay saying we're not going to make Kathy Ingram and her, you know, and her staff and Jackie and those folks
Did a
work
little midnight to certify
to
signatures,
certify
yeah.
signatures,
Yeah.
because we opened and closed the warrant.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, then that's what we ought to state.
Well, the other thing,
Richard?
it does say guaranteed placement.
Yeah.
So it stipulates there guaranteed placement if it's in by the 28th. And after that, it does float in the wind.
No, but what it says is, in order for a petition to be guaranteed placement, 10 named signatures of registered voters are required.
On that date.
It doesn't say on that date.
Well, it's implied, I guess.
Well, let's say it.
Yeah,
Let's stop implying it, and
Yeah,
let's say
it's
it.
implied.
And Stephen, if we want to change the wording in this, I'm all for February 28th, that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, this isn't prepared as a resolution or a vote. I think it was more like you did with the Kathy's
Yeah,
memo.
but I
I'm okay
think
with it, I'm
he's.
just hear my concerns,
Yeah,
right?
no,
So that the citizens understand, the residents understand
understand
the
that.
reason why we're picking the 28th, that there needs to be, so put a little extra, more legalese wording in there, so it's clear. And we're trying to get the information out, put it on the website, so people will have plenty of time to realize they have to get their stuff together by February 28th.
I can read it as one statement, but Mark's right, you could break it.
Yeah.
I can read it as a continuation of the due date and blah, 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 like conditions, but whatever.
I think the statement ought to be something like, we cannot guarantee certification of citizens petitions submitted after noon on Tuesday, February 28th.
That sounds
Boom,
fine.
right?
Does that- Can you, and then put that on the website, the front page, so
Right.
that people know, and they're not shocked that they have because it's 10 signatures and it's by February 28th. It's giving them,
I mean, it's 10 signatures,
You
it's
guys,
not like.
Debbie, did you get that? You guys, you went fast me, and you guys say that again.
Mark, do you want to give that one more time to Debbie?
Say-
Yeah, we do not guarantee certification of citizens petitions submitted after noon on February 28th, 2017. I think that's
Yeah.
straightforward.
That's okay.
And that way, we can be doing anything we want to with opening and closing the warrant, but, we're not gonna get that other.
The town
nonsense
clerk
going.
running around trying to rush and satisfy.
Yeah, she might be
We
busy.
cannot guarantee, we do not guarantee
guarantee
certification of
certification.
signatures submitted with citizens petitions afternoon on 2/28.
Right, well, that's the date she's recommending, and
Got it.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
All right, and
That's- Just so people understand, that's 7 weeks from today.
anything on subcommittee reports? No?
I have a comment before
Yes.
we close. I didn't mention it earlier, but I thought I would mention it because I think it's pertinent. Normally, we have no interaction with citizens' resident comments. But I think when a resident absolutely names select board members by name and in a fashion that could be perceived as negative, I retain the right to go back and talk with that person on
Yes.
camera. I didn't say anything when it happened tonight,
Yeah.
but in retrospect, it's not fair.
That's true.
Okay.
And I think that's something we should probably ask residents not to
Yeah, they
pinpoint.
should.
They should not do that.
refrain.
yeah.
That's not the position
Yeah.
there. They can complain all they want, but, a one-sided debate on the camera is inappropriate.
And it puts select board members, and I agree.
Well,
Yeah.
but as long as we're gonna talk about this, and I'm not gonna get into it because there was extensive articles in the Long Island News and the Reminder, and whatever, but we've all been getting letters saying, please support the SOI. There is nobody in town that I know of who's seen this SOI. Nobody knows what's in it. I don't even know if it's been written, to tell you the truth. I certainly haven't seen it, and everybody who's written me that letter, I've said to them, what's in this SOI, and once I know, until I know what's in the SOI, I'm not gonna do anything about it. And to me, that's part of the issue is, it hasn't been written, and I will tell you, I go back to the very first high school SOI. When it was written, it was a piece of garbage, and pardon my use of that, but it had factual errors in it, was wrong, and we ended up with a special select board meeting, I believe, because we had to approve it in time for a deadline, and a bunch of people, I think on the select board, wouldn't sign it with the factual errors in it. So until anybody sees the SOI, maybe the school committee's seen it, I don't know, but that's why I'm glad to hear you say, Marie, we're gonna discuss it on 1 week and get a chance to see, I don't know what it says. I don't know if it says build 1 school, 2 schools, no schools, renovate 3 schools. Nobody knows what it says. And if the school committee does, they haven't shared it with anybody yet. So, I don't know, have you seen it, Stephen?
I have not.
Okay.
I'm not aware, I'm sure it's being worked on the school side.
I'm sure it is too, but.
They had done one previously,
Yes.
but, and it was not supported by the board at the time. And I think there was a bunch of different reasons why at the time. In response to that, as I've stated before, we did update the JCJ reports on the building. So the new this current SOI that they want the board to support should really reflect the updated data from those reports. And I'm certainly happy to assist the superintendent. I know he has all the information, but I'm certainly offering my services to help, whatever data they need to collect to do this document.
And my understanding is also on the 23rd, they'll be listening to our concerns and questions, so there's going to be a little bit back and forth.
But we haven't
also.
seen the document.
And that's what I'm hoping the presentation on the 23rd will be giving us.
Well,
Yeah.
we had one presentation already, a preliminary presentation by the school committee. I remember when Russ Duperre was here and a couple other people.
The middle school committee.
The middle school
Committee
Okay.
was here, yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So I presume this will be more than a rehash of that.
I'll go over, we're still setting up the agenda for the 23rd, but I will express the concerns. They want to see
It would be very helpful if we
it.
had that document in advance of the meeting.
Well,
Okay.
if nothing else, the town manager and your engineering staff need to be reviewing that document and proofing it out too, in case we have some factual errors in there. It needs to be out, Marie. It doesn't need to be brought in and dumped on the 23rd and said, here, sign it.
Oh, no, that's why I said it's
Yeah, the deadline isn't
presentation.
until April, I
Yeah,
don't
it's not
think.
till
Yeah, the
April.
deadline's
We were
April.
talking about when the vote would be necessary, which I think was a March date. So I think the
Well,
idea,
it doesn't actually have to be approved till April.
yeah.
I
I
don't
think
know
the
exact date,
beginning
but I
of
thought-
April was when they have to submit, so it was
Right.
sometime in March we
Yeah,
were
they were
looking
looking for
at.
a vote sometime in
Yeah.
March, which is fine.
Yeah, but
Like I said, I'm sure they're working on it.
If the SOI is available, and we'll definitely ask for it before the 23rd to be handed out
Okay,
to
well, I'm
everyone.
sure that our concerns will be shared.
Yes. All right, is there a motion to adjourn? Do you need us to reopen in open session afterwards, or just to adjourn, Stephen?
I mean, it's the same situation as before. I can review the details.
Yeah,
of the
we ought
bargaining.
to
To a possible reopen?
we ought to almost definitely reopen, but,
Oh, we have to reopen.
That's
but
why I was asking you.
Once again, I mean, it's a pretty straightforward
yeah.
tentative agreement. If the board feels we need to go into executive session, I think, we can just do it
Well,
right
you've
now.
asked us to go into
We
executive session.
put it on there in case the board wants to discuss the.
So can I just make a comment? For people at home who are watching this, the issue is our police supervisory union contract, and generally what we do is we go into executive session, we grill Mr. Crane about the negotiations and the issues and what the give and take was and why we ended up where we are, and on and on and on and on. And eventually we either say, yeah, we're probably going to support it or not, and then we go into reconvene into open session, and if we're going to support it, we support it. The police supervisor's contract, though, 3 years ago got significantly modified. It basically is keyed off of the police patrol union contract in terms of funding. It's all based on that, and from my perspective, this doesn't change it. We've approved it once before. There didn't appear to be any other changes at all, and from my perspective, I'm not sure why we would go into an executive session based on what
In the packet.
There is
proposed to us,
there is
but-
some additional,
Okay,
but
well,
in
but
the
again,
other-
if other people want to talk, that's fine. Richard, do you want to go into, do it? And we'll come back into open session, but,
Yeah. I'll follow the lead.
well, I don't want to run the
Whatever you-
show here. I'm just saying
You're
that.
not running, you do whatever you want to do.
I don't know what there is to discuss.
The only additional thing, it's, as Mark noted, the compensation that's reflected here is a result of, most of it is they get, because their wages are tied to a percentage over the patrol officers to reflect the higher level of responsibility the sergeants have, and then the lieutenant has a percentage of income over the sergeants to reflect the amount of responsibility more than the sergeants, and then the captain, and so forth. So the wages that were already agreed upon and approved for the patrol officers filter up to them automatically.
Right.
We talked about accreditation for the department. That was the big issue, the number one priority for the chief. And the supervisors are really the ones who are going to make that happen. And I don't have one of the supervisors here, but I can tell you that, the box of files that they have to develop and keep as a part of the accreditation process and the amount of documentation, there is a higher burden on the supervisors. And so that's why in the proposal, there is an additional bonus, if you will, upon achievement of a major milestone in the pursuit of accreditation, and we predict that to be in the last year of the contract, year 3. And then we did in the second year proposing increased uniform allowance. That's really tied directly to changes in the equipment they're going to be using and implementing. Requires different gear, and they buy their own gear. So that really is tied to a change in the uniform policy. And then they are agreeing to forego additional compensation for EMD training, which is kind of a financial concession on their part. So it's as simple as it seems on the one page we have, so.
All right, I guess people are not interested in executive session.
Motion to approve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a
Go ahead.
motion to
Go ahead,
approve?
Richard.
Yeah, motion to approve the contract for the, the police union, or which one?
Supervisors union.
Supervisors union submitted by town manager.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right.
Thank you. And I do want to say, the collective bargaining stuff Debbie will tell you, I've talked about before, is difficult because I am trying to hold the line of financial considerations to the town. I think we've reached fair agreements. I think the board's approved most of them. There's only one outstanding, and I think I've accepted a tentative agreement. I just have not received confirmation from it's the clerical union. But we have great departments, and I think the police department really stands out as a singular top-performing department. Especially, I think, we have great departments in our surrounding communities, but I will put ours up against any town's departments in terms of professionalism. You've heard me say this before. I want to give Chief Stankiewicz a shout out, if you will, because he'd been with the department for a very long time when he was promoted to chief, and we had some discussion about bringing somebody in from the outside to get new ideas. And I think you've witnessed the new direction for the department that the chief has really charted almost from his first day as chief. So I want to commend the chief for really seeing this accreditation as an important direction for the department to go. And really, he's made a lot of changes. So I just want to commend them for that.
Marie, just as a follow-up, the second item on the agenda is to approve executive session minutes, and I don't believe we can approve those in open session.
No, we can't. Yeah.
Otherwise, that they would,
We'll wait till the next executive session. Yeah.
or we can just go into executive session, sit here, approve minutes, but as long as you're in executive session when you approve them, they remain in executive session.
Yes, I
Okay.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree. No, I
We
figured
can
we're
hold them
not.
over.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
hold them
okay.
over.
But Stephen, thanks for the work on the contract. Getting it, I know it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, thank you.
And I hope everyone enjoyed the shortness of this meeting, because the next two promise to be really, really long. And also, we have a special meeting on the 14th of February also. Wanted to remind everyone, and that's when the school committee will be presenting their budget to us. The next meeting, the 23rd, will be a joint meeting also with the school committee. We're still trying to work on all of the agenda, what will be done. And then the 6th of February is going to be a very long meeting. We have capital planning, community preservation, and I was just reading, you're having someone else come and present. Is it the DIF people? The Converse Street people? And, the last thing I want to tell everyone is you have been invited for Wednesday night to go to CP, the Community Preservation Committee is having their review of all of
Public
their.
hearing.
Pardon?
The public hearing, I
The
believe, is
public
when.
hearing, and they said, any select
This
board.
coming Wednesday
This
night?
coming Wednesday night, anyone who is interested, they want to welcome them. Please sort of let me know if you're going, and so, because I don't think we'll end up with a quorum. I know that Tom's out of town. It depends on how much we
Yeah, that
all
one
give
doesn't matter.
opinions.
It's not a
Yeah.
select board meeting, you're not,
And,
Even if there's three of us there.
Yeah.
okay, and Steve Weiss said if you can't go, or if you're going to go, all of the applications are online to review them. If you have any questions or concerns about them, he's open to hearing from the select board
Where's
even
their
before they
meeting?
vote. I forget.
They usually do it at Greenwood.
I'm not sure if that's where it is this time. I want to say the high school. I will send you an email to that effect.
Hang on, just give me a second.
what was
Yeah.
the other meeting you had? You had 214,
I ha-
223, and what was it?
2-6.
2/6 is our regular select board meeting, but it's going to be
Okay.
very, very long, so bring snacks.
Why didn't we take some of those things on now?
Oh, it's
Oh,
here. But the public hearing is here. It's here
Is
in
right
18.
here, right in here. That's what kept thinking the high school, okay?
Can I, since we are done relatively early, and as you noted, the meeting that the Dwight Road developer will be here presenting.
Yes.
It's going to be a long meeting anyway, just for the sake of efficiency. What he's going to be requesting that night is a warrant article establishing the DIF district and accepting, the financing plan and triggering making sure that it goes on the warrant. In order to prepare a presentation for town meeting, he will, at his own risk and expense, release the traffic engineer to do additional design work and cost estimating, and there's some steps that need to fall into place, but he's looking that night for a vote, essentially, and we'll have the warrant article drafted, the language that needs to be in the warrant, but we'll be asking for a vote to approve that
If you
warrant
could get
article.
us that information way before the 6th meeting, so that when select board members have questions or concerns, you can try to air those out or get the answers before the 6th, because we won't have, with so much on, I'm concerned about that being able to be on. So if you could get that to us as soon as possible.
Stephen, that just raises a question to me, what's the town's obligation to pay for these improvements? What's the town's obligation to do the improvements at all? And I suspect that, you're doing the improvements, somebody's gotta pay for them, and is it the town that must pay for them, or can we just, pardon my reference, but the Long Meadow shops and say, because of you, this is going on, and therefore, here's your share of the, like we're doing with the Redfern, William Street intersection?
The diff is really intended to fund improvements that just wouldn't be covered by something like that, like a mitigation amount. And if we weren't doing the diff, in this particular instance, two things would happen. Either the project itself wouldn't happen, so that you wouldn't get the benefit of the development, the future tax revenue, the improvements, the jobs, all that good stuff. Or they would do the building that is by right in Long Meadow. We'd haggle over mitigation, but the cost it would still be short of the cost to do the full improvements, because they're only contributing a small percentage of traffic greater than what's already being generated.
Which
The
is a
val-
mess.
Which is already a mess. The value of the diff is that you can do it on a holistic corridor-based approach, and because on the East Long Meadow side, the land is tax exempt, and on our side, it's vacant land assessed at a fairly low, I say low, but, an amount that doesn't, nominal amount compared to what it will be as built. It's like 100% increment. And so the financing plan, I think, is very favorable. If the financing plan required some additional subsidy from the town or something like that, I think we would have a very difficult time bringing this forward. But because the increment, I believe, is going to fully fund all of the infrastructure improvements, I think it's going to be, an obligation the town can absorb. But now there's two towns involved, East Long Meadow. So there's an intermunicipal agreement that's also going to follow all of this, that'll follow the town meeting vote if it's approved. So East Long Meadow Town Council has to also vote to adopt the district. Under the state law, you need a town meeting vote to adopt the district, and the district is just a map. That's all we're really asking for. The financing, all the other obligations are going to be subsequent votes to that, but the information we need to feed that people are going to have questions about, we're going to need to be developing between February and May 9th. So that's why they're looking for some level of commitment for the
Does the
warrant.
developer if there is no district created, does he not get the TIF?
The diff doesn't, if we don't create the district, there is no diff.
Right.
And I'm pretty cynical about economic development tools in the Commonwealth. Governor Baker just changed the diff from a state-approved thing, which is why there's only like 3 or 4 of them in existence in the entire Commonwealth, to a local option. And now I think you're seeing a little more activity. I think we still will be in the first 10, and this has existed for probably maybe 8 years, the program's existed. There's no 2-town diff. So we're charting some new ground here, which is kind of funny because we talk about Long Meadow being built out, not a lot of economic development. We're gonna do something that hasn't been done in an economic development standpoint in the state, if it's approved. I'll be honest, and I've said this to you before, what's exciting about the project is it's almost in the too good to be true category, in that we are gonna be able to, if it works how we're analyzing it now, a really bad traffic corridor and a major traffic problem that's existed for years and gotten worse and worse and worse will be ameliorated through this corridor improvements program at no additional cost to the taxpayer, because the project will finance the improvements. Now you say, well, why don't we use the revenue to lower taxes or something like that?
Right.
If you don't do the improvements, you don't get the project, you don't get the revenue, and you don't solve the existing problem.
And if it doesn't show increased revenue, nobody would do it.
And yeah, no one would do it, right?
But just that statement, Stephen, that if you don't do the improvement, you don't get the project. You know, that's the question, I guess, that I don't understand, is that, I mean, if whatever this project is, and I gotta tell you, I don't understand the project itself well enough, is so favorable, you know, why is it so dependent upon widening the street and putting in turn signals?
It's not dependent on that, but to gain access, to make the site better, more accessible, and I don't mean accessible from a disability standpoint, I mean from a vehicle standpoint, and getting into and out of traffic on Dwight Road, especially if the driveway's right across from Converse Street, it's a challenge today. It's number one, the top two crash locations are Converse and Dwight and Williams. And so you have a traffic issue now. So, and you know, Mark, a project of this scale, doing 3 major intersections as a consolidated project and having all new signals that can all talk to each other and flexible timing and everything else, you know, maybe on the tip in 2040, you know, we'll get funding to do something like that. And it's an existing problem today. And that's what makes this great, is you're right, you'd maybe get you maybe get some part of the development without the diff, but it wouldn't be as good. You still wouldn't get the traffic improvements, and long-standing traffic issues would remain unresolved.
But we're asking people in Long Meadow to forego benefits of this increased tax revenue for some number of years, and I don't even know, we're gonna figure that out.
It's part of
Whether
the
it's
principle.
8 years, 10 years, or 20, because that increased tax revenue is gonna pay for these improvements. And so my question is, you know, why have the hassle if we have no benefit for 20 years? I guess that's what I wanna better understand. To some degree,
yeah.
to be
I mean, the
convinced of
benefit-
I
it,
think
but
that you're like,
better understand it.
it's a wash to begin with, right? It's not costing you anything, you're just not getting the benefit,
Yeah.
right? But you're getting the
Yeah,
project
the
done
bonding, my understanding is the
with
bonding
with
doesn't
the
go.
future income.
Yeah, the bonding doesn't go against the town's bonding cap, or
Right,
maybe East
right.
Long Meadow bonds the project because they want to be
Right.
the fiscal agent, because
Right,
there's
right.
administrative costs are a part of the
Right,
financing
okay.
plan. Again, the project may not happen, so you may not get the
Right,
revenue to
right,
begin
right,
with,
right.
and, or you may get a reduced, scaled-back version of the project, and so you get some revenue, but you're still stuck with the problems.
You've strangled the future in
Yeah.
order to save some money now. Well, and the other thing is, they're going to have to pay something towards the roads, and that makes this a more expensive, because the cost of fixing that road in front of them is higher than if they went into maybe 5 miles down the road. And so they're going to say, why should we bother here? We'll go down there because we're going to have to pay this extra. But the state is making it attractive for them to do it here. And we're going to have to forego the value of this for a few years. But again, when we're going to be ready to hit the cap, or we're really have some strong financial needs, all of a sudden this extra revenue is going to pour in.
Right, but Maria,
Without the state, we couldn't do this.
And I understand that,
Yeah.
Mike, you know, but we're asking the people of Long Meadow to take on, and I don't know how many people work there, visit there, or whatever, this building that's being built, who will come through off of 91, through Laurel and, you know, potentially Laurel and Converse Street, potentially Route 5 and Converse Street, whatever it is, that we haven't done anything yet. And oh, by the way, we're gonna fix the Dwight Road areas, you know, and we're not gonna get any additional tax revenue for 10 or 15.
But
or
Mark,
whatever number
you're
is.
suggesting that if we don't take this on, the traffic won't be there. No, they'll just move it further into Long Meadow, so it's East Long Meadow, so we just won't get the value of the
Well,
correction, but we'll still get the traffic.
And that's what I wanna understand. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, I'm just saying,
Let me-
I don't understand it yet, because.
Let me spin it a different way. Let me recast how you just said that. Because we're not really asking the residents of town of Long Meadow to incur an obligation they currently have, or forego something they're currently benefiting from. Look at it this way. We want to fix the traffic in that part of town. We want to fix it. But we don't have the bonding capacity, or we have other priorities that are continuing to drive our spending decisions, so we just can't get to it. Long Meadow Street's a higher priority, you know, that's on our tip thing. So this is still years away, but we know it needs to be fixed. This development affords the town's people the opportunity to fix that section of town's traffic, and we're not going to them for additional funds to do it.
And DPW is going.
And DPW is potentially going there too. So it's a really major redo. And I know, I got an email after our last discussion about traffic from a resident who was concerned about, changing the character of Long Meadow. And that's something that's kind of been rattling around in my head a little bit about, how do we feel about this? And I think there are times where you need to make changes, but I know you all and I feel the same way. We need to make changes that help us changes that are targeted that can sustain the character of the community. And sometimes that means changes to road configurations or, things like that. But the character of the community shouldn't be queuing all the way back to Turner Park baseball field to get to East Long Meadow on at 5 o'clock. That's not a great character of the community either. If there's ways where we can mitigate that, it's important to do it. I mean, we spend more time on traffic than almost any other issue, and it's the number one driver of complaints. And so, rather than say we're asking the residents to give something up, I would say we're giving the residents a benefit that really isn't going to cost them anything more in their tax bill that they're paying today.
Okay.
A major benefit too, and like I said, it's almost too good to be true time, and I'm the most cynical person about economic development there is.
Well, like I said, those are some of the questions I'm hoping we'll answer.
I think it's great we aired some of this out because I said I'm a little worried when I heard they're coming in on the 6th. That's going to be a big meeting.
Yeah, it is going to be big, and like I said, that's why, because we're early tonight, we could, we could chew on it a little bit,
Yeah.
because I know on the 6th I'm going to ask the board to commit to a warrant article. Like I said, the warrant article is just establishing a district. It's a map. It's not the whole thing.
Yeah.
Subsequent votes will be needed after that, but that's the big thing. And like I said, it's the commitment from the board to put on the warrant that will give the developer confidence to spend his own money, like I said, at risk of failure at town meeting or future things that don't happen, to develop the information he needs to do to move the project forward. But it's going really well. I mean, this is something that has taken a long time to gestate, but the developer's been remarkably cooperative. He has a consultant that specializes in developing these DIF districts who I think will be here to answer specific questions like that. Like I said, this could really be a significant accomplishment for the community, with really not a lot of municipal effort.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us. We'll
Want a
see you on, motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Is there a second? All those in favor? Aye. And we'll see you on January 23rd. Thank you. It's early, 6:30. We changed it, it's kicked up a little bit early. I believe it's 6:30, right, Debbie?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, okay, the joint meeting.
Any more
All right.
changes?
Huh?
Any more changes?
No more changes, all right, thank you.
Thanks.